deeper conversation.
How many teachers in Uganda did you consult? But there's a mistake we are making.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
Which is good.
We went to this school, we ran it Western, we ran it Northern, we ran it, then you come.
Isn't that an achievement?
Objective and non-partisan.
Honorable Minister, there were a number of points. I want to start with you.
Straight from the hearts of open-minded men and women.
Money tends to move faster at night. So when people are not counting,
Don't take it for granted.
Candid and authentic.
Because Uganda is not Thailand.
That's not correct, and we should stop that kind of mentality. So what I'm saying
That's
is
a trick question. Don't answer.
I'm not getting into that. I'm not getting into that.
Tell him you speak Luo.
I think that's where we are beginning to have a problem.
I think what is going to kill the parish model are all the misconceptions on how it's supposed to run.
I know that the Prime Minister is listening.
Behind the headlines.
Charles, let us agree. We liberalized the economy.
We are several nations put it together.
Why don't you appreciate that?
What if it fails?
I'm happy
And
to
he's
answer.
a good lawyer because Amin is not in power.
The parish development committee is functional. It is there. That there is a parish chief, that the beneficiary is doing.
So we look at expenditure. We don't look at revenue. And that is the challenge we are giving them from Minister of Finance.
Your fountain of new knowledge, flowing into the mass body of knowledge.
First get the knowledge of Bukedia, how they want to be modernized.
Every Wednesday, 10 p.m. on your public broadcaster.
You return money to the treasury, which is meant for the people.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Welcome to this edition of Behind the Headlines. My name is Charles Odongtho, your host. This Wednesday, we are back again with yet another edition of Behind the Headlines program. For the next 2 hours, we will be discussing, taking a look at the current economic situation. Is it working for you? Is it working for me? What's the problem if it is not working? If it's working for you and not working for me, can I take some lessons from you so that I better myself as well? And that is from east to west, from south to north. We are going to be asking ourselves, what do we need to do right? Are the principles being gotten right? Is the parliament, the government, or the duty bearers, if you like, are they doing the right things to ensure that if there is a challenge, that those challenges are answered to the benefit of the common person? To discuss all this, let me start from the extreme left. We have Honorable retired Captain, Flight Captain Francis Edward Babu, former minister, and is now retired, but the brain is still, you know, firing from all cylinders. Honorable, you're most welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Good evening to our viewers, and thank you very much for inviting me and having me in the studio.
Thank you.
Retired, not tired.
Exactly.
Thank you very much.
And that's most important, you know. Then you can, you know, guide and give
and
direction.
the weather has been rather interesting. There's rain, and it's getting a bit chilly.
I like it.
Yeah, you like it, but a few people are getting a few colds. And
when I hear from Nebi to Kabong,
yes,
then I was in Fort Poto, Mbarara, Masaka, to Jinja, Soroti, it's raining. Then in Kampala, it's raining. I feel happy because then if the if the pocket is dry, then you can get something from the
actually, it's
garden.
important that it rains because in some parts of East Africa, they are having dry weather and they are having a lot of problems getting food.
Yeah.
So I hope we can get food for our people.
Thank you. Next to Captain Babu is Honorable Dr. Agnes Atem, a pair woman MP for Amolata district. She loves discussing economics, and from the Great Lango region, she has worked with the people from the grassroots. She's now representing them in Parliament. We could not have gotten a better person to discuss this topic. Honorable, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me again. Indeed, I represent the economics of the people.
Good. Next to Honorable Agnes is Honorable Dixon Kateshumbwa,
Thank you very much, Charles, and good evening, our viewers.
And then we have the guys who teach economics from the classroom. They bring us ideas from the classroom, the theory, and then they mix it with the practicals, and they hit us on the head and say, you're not doing the right thing. Starting with Dr. Fred Muhumuza. He teaches economics, development economics, and I'm always happy, excited to host you, Doctor. You're most welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Good evening, our viewers out there. Hope you are not going to doze off. But in case you sleep, then that means your economy is working.
The economy is okay.
You know that those who will not sleep, they are not.
The economy is not good.
PSST said,
according to the permanent secretary.
Yeah, the poor can't sleep and the rich can't sleep. So if both sleep, then it's okay.
That's a good one. Finally, we have Dr. Susan Namirembe Kavuma. She is a senior lecturer and researcher at Makerere University and teaches economics at the School of Economics at Makerere University. Doctor, you're most welcome to the show. I think of all these people, it's you with the maiden appearance here.
Yes, Charles.
And we want to welcome you. I know that many people fear talk shows like this. They think that we harass them. So feel at home and be a good lesson. We are going to ensure that you are a good lesson to the rest out there so that the rest can also come.
Thank you for the encouragement. And good evening, our viewers. I'm happy to be here to participate in this discussion.
Good. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to start with the guys who are currently representing constituencies in Parliament. I'm going to start with Dr. Agnes and then Dixon to first test, because one thing that I know is we can discuss economics from a micro level, how it is working in Amolatar, in Bunyoro, in Ankole, in my place in Nebi. We can discuss how it is in Karamoja, but there is another thing discussing it at a level where you sit here at a national level, you're on TV, and then we want to appear grand and GDP and all that. But I would want to first know from Dr. Agnes how her people are doing currently, and then I will come to the rest later to compare how we are doing at the grassroots. Are people having enough in their pockets? If they are not, what's the problem? What can we do to ensure that the dynamics are gotten right?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Charles. And you've done exactly what I wanted us to do here, that we need to talk about economics that works for the people, but not the economics that we read and the figures that we are told. I would say that in Amolatar, the economic situation is that the consumption and the spending and the income or money in the pocket has greatly reduced. The other thing is that the access to credit, be it even the local credit that we get from our groups, the level at which people are now accessing that credit has also reduced. But also, most importantly, that I see in the community, particularly, I think around June, July, we had very serious food shortages, and there was very high increase of prices, of commodity prices generally, which I think was affected from the books and from the theory. It's really kind of a global shock. It was all these inflation issues. They're telling us about COVID, about Ukraine and all that. But for us, we saw the price for soap, the price for cooking oil, those really basic commodities prices going up. And this definitely reduces the purchasing power of our people. And for any economics that works for the people is very simple. That people, an ordinary person, should be able to have money in the pocket to buy whatever basic needs that that person requires. So for me, that summarizes the economic situation on ground. And I saw the drivers of this issue were mainly in two aspects, from the supply and the demand side. And from the supply side, at the moment, after the June, I see a lot of activities around the service industry. But of course, in Amolatar, our service industry is a few private schools that we have, a few borders around. We don't know about the other bigger services that it is always talked about. And also from the industry side, a level of construction industry and a bit of manufacturing. A few grinding mills are opening here and there. For me, those are the indicators and the drivers of the economy at the grassroots level. And from the demand side, yes, like I said, the consumption and the demand of our people have kind of reduced. So in a nutshell, we are seeing the economy trying to pick up, but at a very slow pace.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honorable Dixon from Shema.
Yes.
Tell us, how is the landscape from what you're picking, from what you're seeing, from what you meet and interact with?
Thank you very much. Certainly, I think my views are not any much different from what my honorable colleague has mentioned. I am on a daily basis in touch with the people I represent in Parliament. That is the people of Shema municipality. I think that everybody is virtually struggling in this economy currently, because if you talk to the savings groups or banking institutions in my constituency, they will tell you that people are not banking. Those who have borrowed money are not paying back, and there are no new borrowers. That is an indication that there is low productivity in the constituency. And I think this is a case across the board, especially upcountry. And the factors that have led to the issues I'm talking about are very much connected with the whole ecosystem. You will realize that we are not yet out of the woods of the pandemic, the effect of COVID, and of course the actions we took to safeguard our population resulted in situations that we are facing now. For example, I know many schools in my constituency which are struggling, private schools, and it is going to take time. This year is going to be another year of hope, but the recovery will continue until next year, and I think another year to go. Because if you look at, for example, the schools, the entire ecosystem around the schools, suppliers, those who are supplying scholastic materials, those who are supplying foods, for all the period of lockdown, they have not recovered from that. Those who had money, I know that Bank of Uganda issued some guideline for restructuring, which ended. But I think that many people are still struggling, and I would really call upon BOU to look at how do you extend some of the monetary relief measures that were granted during COVID. Remember, we came out of COVID, then we get into a Ebola crisis, and many businesses have not recovered. Now, when you go up country, it is even worse because many people are not borrowing from the traditional tier 1 banking institutions. They are borrowing from circles, from those local financial institutions that do not comply with the guidelines of BOU. And so a lot of people, you know, have had their properties up for sale. Of course, unfortunately, there are no buyers because everybody is struggling. So the only hope that is keeping most of our, especially upcountry people, is that there is food. We've had rains. I know in my constituency, those who planted beans in the first phase of rain, those who did arrear, they are starting to harvest. In the next few weeks, there will be a lot of food. The prices of matoke are going down. And in Shema, we grow a lot of coffee. My farmers will start harvesting coffee end of next month, and by May, they will have some income. So the situation of having food is what is keeping people, but they are still struggling commercially because of low consumption. I know those who are involved in other economic activities like, you know, rearing animals. The issue of market is still a problem. And of course, when that is a problem, then you look at the side of value addition. But value addition requires a lot of government planning. PDM has not taken off as anticipated. Most of the groups have not accessed the money. And so there is limited economic activity. And I think this is where we need to have a conversation. If there is no productivity on the ground, then you will continue to see people struggling with fees, with medical bills. And the other issue is about government spending. We have many contractors who still have struggling with arrears from government. There are also no new contracts, you know, coming up. My colleague here and I, we sit on the budget committee. If you look at the appropriation we made, some of the, you know, things we allocated money have not been funded. And some of those we thought would impact the grassroots, you know, in the areas of agriculture and other services. So, for example, if you have money for rehabilitation of schools, and when a school is being rehabilitated in Amorata, the multiplier effect of, you know, the economics around that rehabilitation trickles down to very many people. So if it's not done, there is a problem, okay? If it's a water source being constructed, you know, you will have someone who will benefit economically from that small activity. If it is a power line being extended, you will have people who will be able to sell food, you know, contractors, transporters, the fuel station will have to sell. So the government spending also being limited, it also worsens the situation. And the delay in the implementation of PDM, for me, I know that our leaders are patient, but our people are not as patient as our leaders, and I think we need to see how we can really get things done quickly so that we boost productivity at the local level, and that will result into increased economic activity, increased taxation, and then the cycle comes back.
Okay, Honorable Captain, from the two legislators who I guess probably are the, you know, the most recent visitors to their constituencies and to the people out there. Town, of course, the situation might be different, but in many cases, They are really very similar. How is the feeling the same here from your point of view, from what you see, from what you hear, from what you feel?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's very nice they have told us. These are symptoms of the problems of our economy. It's slightly bigger than what the symptoms are there. We all see them. People don't have enough money in their pocket. The poverty is the word. There is poverty in the country, and that poverty can be measured. There are people who can measure it very well. Then we also have mismanagement, and there's corruption. Now, if we go and look at the economy itself and say, what is the problem? First of all, look at the budget they gave us. They gave us a budget of 48 trillion, and the money they have is only 23 trillion. So you have a deficit. Now, right from there, you have nothing to spend. First of all, that 23 trillion, most of it goes into the debt. You spend most of it, I think 17 trillion goes into the debt. Then what remains is what you have to divide among everything that you have to spend on. One honorable member just told us about the recurrent and the development budget. The recurrent is where you have the salaries and everything. And once you've removed that, what do you remain with? And then the development, who is financing the development budget? So once you've got all those very clear, then you understand how much money you've got. But what is apparently unfortunate is that we must know that from the time we had the privatization, liberalization, and all those things that were done many years ago, what they called the shock therapy those days, and all sorts of things. This country has never had a complete budget which does not have a deficit. So we are there running a budget every year which has got a deficit, and the money which we require is sometimes either donated to us or we borrow it to do certain things. And if we cannot manage to borrow, that means we are short. Therefore, the little money we remain with, we have to get some sort of austerity measures, to cut the austerity measures. Now, the other point that we have, I would like to thank at least the government. During the COVID, they did not subsidize. The other countries did subsidize, and they're having a lot of problems now. Now, because of not having subsidies, we can manage to limp on. We're actually limping. It should not be said that the economy is fine and everything is all. We are limping, and therefore the description of the symptoms we're being told about is very, very clear. The shock of the COVID, the natural shock that came about, the Ukrainian war, which brought about the fuel price to go up, and of course the mismanagement. Now, in my opinion, we have to get out of this by having certain approaches. One of the areas that and the mitigation you are talking about of the PDM, and that is to try and help to sort of prop up the economy. We also have another problem. There's our population is increasing. The UBOS is saying we are 45 million. The other people, United Nations, they are saying we are 47 million. If you divide that, of course, your GDP comes to a different figure. But now let's go to another point. There's rural-urban migration. A lot of our people are leaving the villages and coming to town. They come to town thinking there's something to get here. But what is helping this country up to now has been food. We can get food, unlike other people who import food. Some of the countries that import food, they are now having running battles with the population. And some of those are actually European. We are having banks falling down in America like dominoes. So you don't play around with the economy. The economy all over the world is in shock. So when we come back to our countries in Africa, and especially Uganda, we are very lucky. There is food, so that is helping us a little bit. And therefore, when you go into those figures they give us, the economists, the GDPs, the PPPs and whatnot, fine. They give us an indication of what the problems are. But if you go to the symptoms of this, we could even have done better if we did not have the mismanagement of the little that we have. For example, the PDM we are talking about, being a mitigation policy program, it can help to sort of revamp agriculture. And they are giving us an example of the milk and the milk, the dairy products, which seems to have, sort of got out, and they're helping a little bit. So if we can get agriculture to come to some level, and our people can get into there and stop propaganda that it cannot work. Whilst we know that in some areas where it has worked now, seems to be doing very well, by the way. And this is an attitude of some Ugandans. We have a mindset problem on issues of simple mitigations that can help us. If we can get out of that, and by the way, part of the component of the parish model is to change people's minds. And that's very big. Now, my view about that is very simple. The only man who has done it and succeeded is the man in Bangladesh called Dr. Yunus, who started that bank. That is the village bank. The Indian thing is the village bank. If we can get this thing out of government, everybody thinks that government is bringing them a present. We need to change our attitude and get, for example, the man who has written about this, and I must congratulate you, in this country has been Suruma, Professor Suruma. Let's get an organization. Let him head it. Let's give these people and tell them this is not money from government. This is a small little bank in the parish, and we can lend you money to do these jobs. And if you've got a good farm, you've got a good dairying, you've got this, we will be able to give you money. Because now they're saying form circles, then we give you money. Now this is causing a lot of problem. People think this is money from government. It's a bakshish. So we've got to get out of that. Now my other view is that we've got a lot of youths in this country. Some of them are leaving university. We need a youth program, a youth national service. Get all these youths who have qualified and take them to all these villages to try and help to make sure the PDM works. We need to be very pragmatic about this. So we need to get out of our attitudes of the mismanagement of our people and put them on the right track. So basically that's my view about our economy. I think the little we have, we can work in it. We can't expand it. It's not rubber that we are going to expand it. It is something that we have to work within the limits that we have. And some of our partners, they've got all sorts of things. You hear them giving warning to our president: don't sign this bill, don't do this, don't do that. We've got to start becoming. We've got to become independent as a country, and then start working within our limits. Baganda have a very nice saying. I'll translate it in English: "Omumpi wakoma wakwata." In other words, we are that short. You can't get further.
That's your limit.
That's your limit. So if that is our limit, let's work within our limits. And by the way, our government, I must thank them that during the COVID they did not subsidize, and our prices are actually going down. If fuel has gone down, some few other things are going down. If we can manage to maintain reducing the costs of commodities and so on and so forth, I think we can go back to our economy. Like the honorable member said, within a year or so, we might go back. But remember, the countries that we work with are already in recession, a very big recession. Some of them have said within a year, some of them might even have a bigger problem than what they're having now. So we need to really wake up and become very pragmatic about our economy.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
If we're going to tighten our belts enough. Good. Dr. Susan, now start telling us about, we need now to know about the statistics. We need to know, you know, from the teaching and whether they rhyme, whether they rhyme with the practice, because economics is a very interesting subject, you know. Many times you think that they will rhyme, but they don't. When they say you don't have money in the pocket, you're complaining, they will say, no, it's okay. Sometimes it's okay, as long as you're eating food. So can we hear from your perspective as well, Doctor?
The opportunity. I must say that the theory rhymes with the practice.
Good.
As I was listening to the honorable members speaking about people not having money, people struggling, I could tell that from the figures, that is what is expected.
Oh.
For example, the recent household survey told of 2019-2020 indicated that poverty has increased. has increased to 30% when you use the poverty line of 1.77 US dollars. But if you use the poverty line of 1.90, it increases to 41%. So ideally, you would expect people to struggle, struggle because they are poor. Related to that, I think it is Honorable Kateshumba was mentioned that, is the reduction in government expenditure. Government is the biggest consumer in the economy. And so if government contracts its expenditure, it's felt in our pockets because they had to cut down on government expenditure, which I think is a good thing because I must say we are living in very difficult times where everybody is struggling. It's not only the Ugandan economy. And some of the causes of our struggling economy are external. We have just come out of COVID, which was a global pandemic that affected all of us. And the recession was experienced by all countries except Uganda and others. Actually, I must commend our policy makers and managers of the economy because we were able to survive a recession even during the pandemic. Well, our GDP growth rate contracted, reduced to about 1.5%. But now we need to look at the recovery. I think the economy is recovering. It may not shoot up straight away, but we were told that, you know, in 2020, it was able to pick up. In 2021, it was able to pick up to 6%. Well, in 2022, it reduced a bit to 5%. That is understandable because we must know that we've faced a number of shocks. Besides the pandemic, we had the Russia-Ukrainian war. Then comes the Ebola. All those are shocks that affect the economy. And so as it is coming up, then it faces these shocks, and then it has to go down. But also, Honorable Tim talked about people not getting credit, and that is understandable because right now the government is implementing contractionary policies, monetary policy, and it has increased the central bank rate to 10% now as of end of 2022. So you'd expect fewer people to access credit. It's expensive. But actually, as I was comparing to our peers in the region, it's the highest in East Africa. So cost of capital is high.
Our cost.
Yeah, our cost of capital is the highest in the region. And so capital is very expensive. And so that's a challenge. That's a challenge that people may want to invest, to open up businesses, to expand, but you get credit at a very high cost. And so that is something that maybe we need to look at. But I'm happy that now the fiscal policy and monetary policy are moving together because we know we all have another burden. Besides these shocks, we have a burden of debt servicing, which is high. And actually, you know, it has shot us, we are now at 49% of GDP, our debt stock, and which is high. And actually, we've moved from low risk to moderate risk, or moderate debt distress. So we need to be careful. We need to be careful. And for us to be careful, then we have to reduce on our expenditure. But maybe we need to ask ourselves, what kind of expenditure should we reduce? Because I was looking at the expenditure of the last fiscal year, and well, in aggregate, the government expenditure reduced, but current expenditure actually was more than budgeted. It's only the development expenditure that was affected. I think the reverse should be true. Well, there is a problem that most times wages are sticky downwards. No one would want to hear that they are cutting their wage or laying off workers, but we are living in very difficult times where we have to take some tough decisions to ensure that we maintain macroeconomic stability. You don't want to have high inflation, so you have to contain that. Uganda's had a very good monetary policy. We've always targeted at 5% and sort of achieved it for a very long time. Okay. Now when you have, because of the Russian-Ukrainian war, we had the inflation going to 2 digits, so they had to devise ways of containing that. But moving forward, I think we need now to spend our money where it pays most, so that the economy can recover better.
Good. Thanks a lot. Now I'm consoled because there is a meeting of minds. There is the lawyers call it consensus ad idem, because if the theorists and the practical findings are matching, then I think we are talking the same language. Then we can find a solution. Good diagnosis there. Doctor, do you agree? Dr. Muhumuza, that I like the point on which Dr. Kavuma ended, that where do we put the money? What should we cut? Is that something that we can expand on?
Well, let me disrupt the consensus and possibly submit a minority report.
I like that.
And
please go ahead.
This last week I went through going home to Hoima, and that road has been deteriorating for the last 4 years. And this is an oil road. It is the one leading to the oil places. And we've really been struggling to say, if really the oil is going to come out, this road needs to be worked on. We have done the roads the other side, between Hoima and the oil wells. But before you get to Hoima, you have to go through Busunju, Kiboga, and then to Hoima. And the road has really been bad. Now, just 2 hours after I had gone through, my district chairman of Hoima, Kadri, lost his life because of a truck that was trying to avoid a pothole.
Oh, no.
And went on his side, and they had a head-on collision. So please, the family of Kadri, these are my relatives and in-laws, friends. We studied together in school. Condolences. But that gives you the real crux of the situation we are in. You cannot have PDM work if you have not fixed the roads.
I like.
And we do not have money to fix the roads because we're already in a bad situation. And fixing roads is not peanuts that lose change you're going to pick. You have seen all the roads in Kampala and the roads out there. And we always sometimes post some good statements. We have done the roads, now you can go to Kaba on tarmac, you can go to Karamoja on tarmac, but people don't live on the UNRA road.
No.
They actually live even beyond the district road. So Uganda has over 165 kilometers of roads. The bulk of them are district and community roads. That's exactly where the people live. If that Fuso can't reach Katesumbua's constituent who actually survives on bananas, and the banana is a heavy crop, it's a heavy product, then the person bringing it to Kampala is going to charge them that cost of those last 4 kilometers. That's why you'll find the bananas in Bushenyi will be 4,000 and in Kampala they are 40,000. Quite often we accuse the middleman. But forgetting before it gets to the road where the truck can stop, somebody had to carry it on the head, charged another 1,000. Another person had to put it on the border. So these are really the issues you want to get into that will get this economy back. And they are not easy to fix. They are not easy to fix. So even when you hear recovery, what recovery are we talking about? COVID taught us that in a hospital there are 3 places. There is the main ward. There is actually the outpatient. There are 4.
Correct.
There is the outpatient. You come, you get diagnosed, you go and swallow from home. But then they say, no, you are a little bit sick. We are going to admit you, and you are on the ward. You can even deteriorate further, and you go into the high dependency unit. You have left the ward. You can now go into ICU. It is possible to recover from ICU to the high dependency unit. There's something to celebrate, but you're not yet back on the ward. So you want to say, where exactly?
Where are we now?
Where are we, even as we recover?
As we talk now.
It's good to celebrate the recovery, but we have been saying, guys, we are not yet back home. We might have left ICU, might have left the HDU, but we are still in the hospital premises. And this economy has been there for some time. We have been hoodwinked by literature, and sometimes my academicians have not been truthful. They will say, you see, Uganda is one of the fastest growing 10 economies in the world. Now, a squirrel can double its weight in 2 weeks. That does not allow us to allow it to compete with dogs.
Or an elephant.
Or an elephant. When the Chinese economy grows by 2%,
that's big.
That's big. When Uganda grows by 10%, that is small.
Very small.
It's a constituency, not even a constituency, in some of these countries. So we don't go by these indicators of growth rates.
No.
You want to judge your growth by your need of the day. With a population growth rate of 3%, you need the growth of double digit.
Yes.
Any growth below double digit is not good enough. You're only improving from ICU
to
HDU. You're not even going back to the ward. So we have been praising ourselves. So even when I see that COVID, or we have recovered, now the economy is recovering, I'm like, guys, there is nothing to celebrate yet. The captain here is a pilot. There is talk about being on the runway. You celebrate that. There is now taking off. You celebrate that. But until you get to cruise level, then the captain can come out and relax and put on autopilot and everything that they do. We have been struggling at a very low height. We have failed to reach cruise level for so many years. Now, I cannot blame COVID on that. COVID just found us still struggling at very low altitude. This plane failed, like
to climb.
Honorable Kasaija said, to climb and get there, where you carry that weight of 3% population growth rate. These are 1 million people per year that you're adding onto this economy, minus the migrants. Now, to do that alone, you're not even going to be able to provide adequate services, social services, educational services, leave alone spare some money to repair your roads. Now, to put even money into PDM. Now, everybody is saying PDM is working. Oh, PDM will work. PDM is 7 pillars. It's not about the financial inclusion. In fact, I am very happy that the money is still sitting somewhere, because if it leaves that platform and goes to the people, it will be lost completely.
I can't go.
Because 2 things have changed really. We used to use the NADs. NADs would bring the seed closer to the people at the sub-county. Now we have changed, and we should, because NADs wasn't working. But that meant we needed to go and invest in the whole system that NADs was doing. Now you are going to give people money. Where are they going to find the seed? Certainly not at the sub-county. They may have to do another 50 kilometers looking for that seed. And they will wipe out the 200,000 you gave them, trying to find the seed. I'm not even sure they will find the right seed. This country has adulterated seed. But even if they found the seed and planted it, where are the extension service people to help them? To know when to plant, when to weed. And when all that is done, where is the guy going to evacuate their produce at a good price? When Muhumuza buys a pineapple in Kampala at 1,500, which came from Masaka, what was the farmer's price in Masaka? If this pineapple is here at 1,500, if a melon is 6,000 in Kampala. So when you look at those things, we are actually saying even the people who borrow to start SMEs and big businesses, they are looking at that very poor households to buy from them.
Who don't have the money.
We say the best way to finance a business is what we call sales revenue. Rwenzori finances itself by selling this bottle. If they can't find a buyer for this bottle, they're in problems. And the banker who lent them is also in problems. And me and you who put our money in the banks, we are in problems. Because remember, the bank lent our money. Now, if they can't recover it from Rwenzori, all of us are going to be in a problem. Now, that's why we're saying we need a comprehensive analysis of where are we. And I like the way Captain put it. These are symptoms.
Yes.
And they are not symptoms of a simple flu. This is a serious disease that requires a massive overhaul of the economy. The kind of overhaul we went through in the 80s and 90s, structural adjustment program.
Correct.
Cut down government spending because you don't have the money. Now, we are expecting Revenue Authority to raise 28 trillion in the coming budget. I was doing the numbers. This is not going to happen. Right now, our GDP is about 162, 164 trillion.
Correct.
Our tax to GDP ratio is about 13%.
13.
Now, to raise 28 trillion, it means GDP must grow to 180 from 164, and we must collect 16% of that. We have stagnated at 13, 12, below 14 for the last decade and a half. Are we going to add 2.5 to 4 percentage points? And is the GDP in this kind of environment going to grow to 180 trillion in 1 year? But that's the budget of 50.9 trillion is based on URA raising that.
Was Ministry of Finance that gives this target, calculating this?
I have been asking them how they came up with these assumptions. Because if you plug those assumptions in the budget you are going to send to Parliament and it's appropriated at 50.9 or 7 trillion, and URA does not find the 28, you have to go back borrowing.
Yes.
To salvage yourself from that, you must cut out certain expenditures now before we submit the budget next week. Because you are going to set yourself halfway a tailored, and which is the borrowing now, 6 trillion. 6 trillion is going into interest payment. 8 trillion is going into debt refinancing. So you're already talking of 14 trillion out of 50. That is not speaking to next year's problems. It's balancing the boat. You haven't added foreign debt service. Now, you cannot get out of these things through a prayer.
Like that.
The Bible at times is very clear that some of these things go with prayer and fasting. Not just prayer.
We are fasting now.
So we need to fast as well. But we don't want to fast because fasting means delete certain items off your menu. Can we finalize the restructuring of government agencies?
Yes.
In the 90s, they
will it cut the costs?
You need to.
And then
but not only the agencies.
And then render many
not only
many family heads
I'm even actually going
unemployed.
further. I'm going further. Not just agencies, but even the ministries and departments. You need to scale down government. Now, those people may be rendered unemployed.
Is that politics
Now,
possible?
that is the politics we talked about, whether it is in place or not in place, but that's the economics. Economics says you cannot sustain continuous borrowing, living beyond your means, as he said, or mumpi wakoma. This mumpi guy wants to touch the ceiling and is climbing on a pack of cards that are going to collapse. So eventually you will all fall. When retrenchment happened in the 90s, that conversation came. Why are you laying off people? Majority of them proved it to be sustainable. They moved on. Mr. Museveni laid off 60,000 soldiers. In order to finance education. And I have read in the literature how they convinced him. They said, Mr. President, the future wars will require educated military. So when you lay off, we put this money in education. So in the future you will say minimum entry is senior 4. Those would be good soldiers. And I think he has a very good educated soldiers today and is doing well. So I think we need to
That's why IGG should not go to them. They are educated.
They are educated, but there are many, many other issues. Logic is what I liked in his letter. These things about logic. You cannot bulldoze yourself through growth. And Uganda's logic is misplaced because you are using supply-side economics. If the households are poor, the industrial parks would never be filled up. Because the industrialist says, who will buy my water? Who will buy the shoes? That's why if you can only afford shoes of 5,000, it's going to be Nigina from China.
Yes.
Because a Ugandan shoe has to be above 10,000. With a Ugandan on average earning 3,500 a day, that person is not going to buy a shoe.
He's a lucky person too.
So we need to get back those fundamentals. And until we address them, the budget we are about to submit to you, please look at it kindly but look at us harshly, so that we can realize.
Correct. Good point. Now we are. I think that you have not.
Minority report.
Disorganized. You have not actually done
There's no minority.
You have just strengthened it and made it stronger, which now gives us a good point to have a discussion. And let's feel free, because I usually, normally how we do it, we usually allow one to speak, you know, like in Parliament, what you call the maiden speech. You don't interrupt. So now that we are
we're out of maiden speech.
Yes, we are now out of the maiden speech. Let's have a discussion and exchange, and feel free to interfere with another person's discussion as long as respectfully done. I need us to come back to the question now on, let's exhaust the question on the politics versus the harsh economics. Can it be done? That reality, can we face it?
Yes.
So who wants to start? Dr. Honorable Babu wants to.
Okay. You see, the good thing, we are not inventing anything new. We are talking about things that are known. Now, the most successful people who have done this, and they came from a very low ebb, was Singapore. They came out with a 3-letter word, and it was to do with merit, pragmatism, and honesty. So we as Ugandans have to start to change. That's the mindset change. And it should not even start down there, it should start right from the top. Now, the meritocracy we're talking about, to have the right people in the right places. Now, when I say to have the right people in the right, somebody who will admit we're not doing well, we should do this. And they should be, you know, they should have the talent. And we should really have it. And actually, the Prime Minister of Singapore said at one time, if a country has got its reserve and it's got the right people in the civil service and in government, they can do that. So this brings me to the point we have here. Our administrative costs are too high.
Yeah. The cost of politics is too high.
No, let's start with that one. Administrative cost includes the politics. Because you are talking about a house of 529 people.
I followed you because of the H in the honesty. That if you're going to say it as it is, then say it as it is.
I know, yes. I was coming. Now, then you see, 529 people in Parliament. It's good. I have no problem with that, but we can't afford it.
Yep.
So we have to come out with a reasonable. I had somebody suggesting 300. Me, I miss 150 or 200, no more. So that's one point. Another area is the civil service. How is it? At one time, we had the structure adjustment he was talking about. We reduced the civil service. In Britain, they did in 1970. A lot of people went in the private sector, and a research was done, and people who went into small and medium enterprises came from government. We have a lot of people in small and medium enterprises here who have come out. Unfortunately, my brother was talking about URA a few minutes ago. URA has destroyed the medium and some small enterprises because of their harsh tax methods they are using. They come out with a new computer thing which is making everybody close their businesses, and they are now depending on only the big businesses, and they are going after people who have got houses. Now, URA has to change its method of work so that they can encourage businesses to stay, especially small businesses. A lot of small businesses, if they are working, as many as possible on a string, they will give you more tax.
But I'm also looking at, let me be the devil's advocate here, since we don't have anybody from URA. You have heard about the stringent targets that they're given, and they're dealing with this pressure as well. Now, just imagine you are a team leader or manager at URA, and that they tell you collect 1 trillion in 1 month, and you have been collecting 500 billion in 1 month. What do? You must go for them, the guys who are trying to evade and
fantastic. Avoid. It's nice to have people who dream and who have got a wish list. A wish list does not mean you can achieve it all the time. I'll have a wish list of having this. You as a leader of URA should tell the truth and say what you are giving us might be difficult. But, and when you push it too far and you lose businesses, because some of these companies that are closing down because they can no longer deal with the taxation.
True.
So we need to look at them very seriously. I'm not saying they shouldn't collect tax. No. we must find better ways of collecting this tax. And the better ways is to try and work with the businessman. All over the world, it is known that there is a love and hate relationship between the tax people and the taxpayer. But we've got to give them also, we've got to give them tolerances. A businessman is usually given, by the way, all these tax people they know that a businessman will get at least 20% out of avoiding taxes. They know that. They play within that. And the whole point is, how do you encourage the taxpayer? By giving them something small so that they can pay you the taxes.
Okay.
Now, from there, I was going to finish with this one.
Yeah.
The second one, where we have to be pragmatic on issues of making sure that we do the right thing, especially on putting the policies into being by creating the true picture of a mindset of our people. So we have to be very pragmatic. And our leaders have to be honest. When people know that you're honest, they will follow you.
Some of them are here.
Yes, they're here. That's what I'm saying. You have to be honest to your people. If you become dishonest, your people begin to say, but this man is telling us this, but he's saying this.
Honorable Dr. Pear, are you guys, as our leaders, are you honest with the economics?
By the way, leading poor people is very difficult and painful.
We are poor ourselves.
Pray for us.
Thank you.
I share their pain.
Yes. Thank you, and thank you very much. Two things that has come out here. One, the argument that politics really works with the economic kind of approach. And I would want to say that politics is not devoid from the economy or from the economics. And I think my teachers here would say that we have that subject called political economy. It is the politics who have the leaders, who have the managers and all that for the economy to run. I think the most important question we need to ask, and I think Dr. Fred brought it up, is that who are we as a country? And I think that goes with the honesty we are talking about. For heaven's sake, 70% of our population are peasant farmers. We are an agro economy, period. And that is why Dr. Fred was bringing the argument, all this industrial park, the buses we are making, all these dreams that we are having, who is going to pay for them? As long as we don't invest in the 70% of our population to be productive, to have the income, to have the purchasing power, to consume whatever we are dreaming to produce, then there is no economics there. And it is very unfortunate that we tend to disregard agriculture. If you go to my district in Amolatar, 99% are farmers. Even the teachers who are there in the rural population, there is no any other economic activity other than farming. You open your farm, you get your sim, you sell, you buy the cement, and then you start constructing a house. Now, if we are to invest, that is where we need to go. How do we make our people productive? How do we ensure that the extension services, they are getting the right inputs? They are planting at the right time. If they have water, for example, like in Amolatar, give them the water to be producing all over the year. But you are going to see that instead of looking at how to produce and make our people productive, we seem to be forgetting who we are and where we are coming from. It is going to be very difficult for us to go whatever speed or landing or cruise that we want to go to. The second issue is that what are our cost drivers with this 70%? Forget about the 30. What are the cost drivers in our districts? The services where our people spend money the most is in the health sector. For us as leaders, every phone call you are getting is about the cost of accessing health care. Social services, basic things. The second other issue is about education. Our people desire for their children to go to school, but they do not have that money to send their children to school. Now, as economists, we know that when you want to generate that revenue, go and invest where you think you can reduce on that cost and then generate the revenue that you need. Now, if you look at our budget, I'm the deputy chair of agriculture. But if you look at our budget of agriculture, development budget is 530 billion. 40% of our budget is funded by development, and that is the little money we have. And that money, almost 70% is recurrent and wage. Literally, as a country, we are not investing in any development thing. We go and borrow money to come and do our agriculture. And yet we know that is where we need to be getting our revenue from. So, and I think that the honesty part of it, and I'm glad that as Parliament, we have an appropriation role. But when the executive suggests to us or brings to us that we need 50 trillion, as a budget committee, we ask the same questions. Where are you getting this money from? What is new? Last year, we didn't even meet the targets of the, URA did not meet their target, but now you're coming with an increase target again. So either it is, I don't want to use the word connivance or anything, but I think we've got to be honest with ourselves. We've got to cut our clothes to our size. Okay. Otherwise, we are assuming to be a very big size when we are actually really, really melting down.
I think we are the short man standing on the
pack of cards.
On the pack of cards. So we are not even putting chairs. Honorable Katesh, I want to come to you, but allow me to go for a break. Right now, immediately we come back from the break, I will start with you. Let's take that break. This is Behind the Headlines.
With freedom. Get MTN Freedom voice bundles that don't expire. Dial *100 *21# or my MTN app for more bundles. Together, we're unstoppable.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride, and as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sawuti 116.
The Chillax bundles from Airtel have been upgraded. Introducing Voice Chillax bundles. No validity, no expiry, no worries. Dial *100 *1#, select voice bundles and choose your preferred Voice Chillax bundle today. Talk longer with loved ones across Uganda with Voice Chillax bundles that don't expire. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're descending into Entebbe Airport. For those proceeding to Kampala City, the biggest event in East Africa is in town.
That's right. The East African Business Expo 2023 is happening from the 23rd to the 26th of March at Kololo Grounds. Join us to network, connect, and grow. Contact us for exhibition or sponsorship opportunities. The 14th East African Procurement Forum and Business Expo 2023 is hosted by PPDA.
Now sit back and relax. It's time to explore great business opportunities.
Do you know your architect? Is your architect registered? An architect in Uganda is one registered with the Architects Registration Board, ARB. ARB is a statutory body mandated to regulate and maintain standards and practice of architecture in Uganda. Save money and life that is often lost in collapsing buildings as a result of employing quacks to supervise your construction sites. Remember, only registered architects have professional indemnity in the event of loss of your property. To learn more about the benefits of using a registered architect, visit www.arbuganda.go.ug now, or call us on 0781 498 823 or find us at PKF Building, Kira Road, Kampala. ARB is here to ensure professionalism in the architectural industry.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Look no further. Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates, and now sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Plus, you can trust Airtel Money to get your money where it needs to go quickly and safely. Simply dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from the break. This is Behind the Headlines here on UBC, and we are discussing, the economics of today and how is it playing out, how is it performing, is it running well, is it challenging, and we have a full panel in the house. I had stated that I need to give Honorable Katesh a minute or two to throw in a rejoinder, but there is someone called Sam Obo says this one needs urgent attention. That kindly remind Dr. Susan and the panel that their entire audience is not economic savvy. So explain to the viewer what things like fiscal and monetary policies are, let alone what the two terms mean. In other words, they should keep educating the viewing public. That's why many citizens don't understand the budget speeches, save for an increase in prices of fuel and basic groceries. I let them borrow a leaf from Dr. Muhumu's. I thought I needed us to read that.
We make it simple.
So we have to keep educating the public as we go along. But Honorable Katesh, your thoughts?
Yes. First of all, I think for the viewers, you know this thing called budget. We talk about it, and I've been on this show, I've mentioned that the budget has got two sides. The expenditure side and the income side.
Yeah.
The income, we all know, is revenue, domestic revenue, and of course borrowing. Obviously, we all know that we have reached uncomfortable levels of borrowing. And so, the only reliable source is our own internally generated revenue. I have said this again and again. The assumptions we are using, and I want anyone to challenge me on this, to think that revenue in this country is going to grow by magic is just misconceived. A country like us, the developing countries, the focus should be on how do we have more indirect taxes, which are as an outcome of consumption. Of course, consumption is driven by disposable income. If you have no one drinking this water, you are not going to get excise duty, and you are not going to get VAT. So, if you focus on someone who has a small shop in town, who has borrowed money, is struggling to pay the banks, his instinct is to run away from you. And I think if you talk to people downtown here, some of the people have decided to go back informal and run away from the formal. I spoke to someone who is struggling to see how does he stay afloat, given that he has built his brand, but everybody around him is going undercover. So we should be looking at, government should be looking at how do you boost increased consumption. that will lead to more and more indirect taxes. Taxation comes from increased economic activity. And if you have more people consuming, more people being productive, have money, how much tax does it comes from Amorata, for example, from Shem? It all depends on what is the ability of the people to consume. I have given this example before that if I have increased egg production in my municipality, how many families are capable of consuming those eggs that have the money? And that thinking needs to be analyzed even as we look at parish model. If you are mobilizing production, how are you mobilizing the consumption in terms of the market? So the aspect of the income side, we need to be realistic. I know for sure, even in the current budget, the borrowing targets we have set, the government is struggling. And so, and let me come to the expenditure side, which is the main, unfortunately, the main focus by government. Very few people in government think about the income side. That's why there is not much thinking that goes into the assumptions we have been talking about. The thinking is tailored on expenditure. When it is now, like now we are in the budgeting process, everybody is around the corridors. How much money have you given me? Without even explaining what you have done with the previous money.
How much money have you produced?
So now you have some of the investments that are bad that we have made as a country. We need to stop them. We need to stop the bad investments. We need to make sure that the store projects are synchronized. You cannot have, for example, donor money for a project. The project gets finished, but the counterpart funding is unavailable for years, and the project reaches closure. We have right now civil servants. We've not been talking about ministries. A lot of ministries have got wage, but you have times when civil servants tell us that, we are in office, we have nothing to do because the development budget is constrained, and so you have, now we have increased the scientists' money, so they are there in the ministries of agriculture, but you go to Namulonge, you go to Nagrik farms, what activity is taking place? Because there is no funding. So it is time for us to be very realistic. I know these economists want to keep a picture, for the GDP. World Bank that we are growing, but I think it's important to say no. This year we can have a smaller budget than last year, so that we are very realistic with our people. We are creating expectations that we are unable to meet. And for me, I think there is also some aspect of dishonesty that we need to deal with.
On whose part?
On government.
On government. Because you see,
but you are part of government.
There is this thing about supplementary.
Yeah.
Maybe executive.
The supplementary. You have done appropriation, then there is this window of 3%, which actually goes into a trillion plus. And before you know it, there is a lot of reallocation, and some of the critical areas that were funded through budget are not funded. And some of those areas are the ones we are talking about, because you see, if there is a road construction taking place in Amorata, the trickle-down effect in the whole activity goes down to the people. So we need to be very realistic with our budgeting process. It is time for the country to take bold steps. You have been talking about parliament. There used to be this argument about the money, the 200 million they give MPs for vehicles. And we went into some calculation with some colleagues and calculated and found that a civil servant, like me, I used to be a commissioner, the vehicle I used to have cannot be bought by 200 million. It is certainly more. But a vehicle driven by an average commissioner in government, in 5 years, government will spend 1.5 billion at minimum on maintenance, driver, fuel, and all that. And when you see the argument about 200 million, one of that can't buy even a new one, vis-a-vis the 1.5, it is time for us to look at how do we, for example, deal with the issue of transport across government. We have a new term, retooling, in the budget.
Yes.
Repairs. Is it time, for example, to think about the Indian way, the auction system for procurement, to minimize the, the cost of projects? Is it time to say every government official, you will access a loan, buy a vehicle
for yourself
and maintain it, so that we take very, very serious strategic steps, as opposed to waking up, you hear the ministry, we have cut expenditure, we have cut what, but which expenditure are you cutting? Even if you collapse the parliament, 300 members of parliament, but you keep the budgeting discipline we are seeing, where projects are halfway. Look at the money we spent around the whole science around COVID. What are the results? If you look at the projects that are midway implemented, not complete. So it's time for us to increase efficiency in implementation. It is time for us to say realistically these are our targets. If you put pressure on URA, thinking they will do magic, you do not have enough, a lot of corporations growing to give you huge corporation taxes, or to pay a lot of salaries for you to get direct taxes in form of pay as you earn. Your fallback is consumption.
Okay.
The more people that can drink beer, the more people that can take soda, the more people that can call, drive cars, go and get new passports, the more indirect taxes you are going to get.
Okay.
And for me, that is the conversation that needs a lot of deep thinking by our planners.
Some of you, okay, thanks, the Honorable Dick. Some of you have proposed massive overhaul. Let me bring in views and the questions and thoughts from some members of the public that are viewing right now. Someone called Raymond Mulisa says, thanks, Charles. I agree with Dr. Muhumuza. Structural breakdown in the economy is the root cause of what is happening to our economy today. With high levels of unemployment, tax evasion, poor infrastructure, and an exaggerated government expenditure, we can't expect miracles. COVID, Ukraine war, Ebola,
and now
excuses.
Mabaga is down south. It's about to come up as well.
This guy says Mabag is in Tanzania.
And now Uganda is going to ask for billions
to prepare. Prevention will come later. And then, this guy says COVID, Ukraine war, Ebola are only excuses that found us already in ICU. For him, he says we are in ICU, not high dependency unit. In my opinion, government departments need an overhaul to reduce unnecessary expenditures. Then someone here called Henry from Kawanyoro. He says he's a socio-economist. He says, I love the deliberations, Charles. It is too long. Today in social media, one entrepreneur reportedly has arrears of over 90 billion. And the businesses are on the verge of being closed by URA because of VAT arrears. The problem here, Honorable Katesh can explain better, VAT is charged on invoicing, yet government, the biggest defaulter, yet government is the biggest defaulter for most service providers. Why not change the law to to avoid these challenges? Can Honorable Katesh share the extent this has affected revenue collections in Uganda? Henry, I'm stopping your point at that. That's enough, because you have written a whole paragraph. I need to get other voices as well. Another person says, resuscitating our economy, simple formula. Ensure that we have only 60 MPs, one representing reduced districts to 60, zoned into 10 economic growth poles, he calls them EGPs, of 6 districts each. Let's not have district council, no sub-county council. Planning must be at the EGPs. No permanent electoral commission. MPs elected by councillors at the EGP. 18, 3 from each district. President should be elected directly by MPs. Cabinet, we should only have 16, all of them from outside parliament. The governors should head the EGPs and form the upper house in parliament. That's what this guy is suggesting.
Good. That's a good one, by the way.
Then another person is saying, good evening behind the headlines. Dr. Muhumuza, why don't you advise government? This is called Michael Musima. Why don't you advise government to be fair to genuine businessmen or women, because it seems the system favors thieves due to predatory lending. And then another person says, I'm called Hafashima Asimwe. Charles, I'm following up the show. My name is Asimwe from Kisoro. The current economic questions are a threat to mankind, not just here in Uganda, but in the entire African continent, including the Great Lakes region. The macro and microeconomic problems are no longer a bath away. The main tarmac roads don't help the Wananchi down where each of us emanates from. The government can equally invest in rehabilitation of feeder roads to boost local farmers. I'm glad Honorable Dixon and colleagues are more elaborate without leaving anyone behind. The PDM ideology still looks a sham. The OPM has a heavy load if the target is to ensure that government reaches the households. Regards. Thank you. Then Frederick says, Charles, thank you for the insightful show. On rationalization of government, isn't it a bluff to have a lean central government while burgeoning local government administrative structures? That is Frederick. Then Godfrey Chakala says, I like the minds on this show behind the headlines this evening. They are having healthy talks. I wish our leaders can have such brains. Thanks to all of you. You see what people are saying out there. Then, okay, let me take 3 more. This person says, I'm watching you from Abu Dhabi.
Oh, good.
I have a small network problem, but I'm watching you. Thank you, moderator and viewers. I want to take this opportunity of thanking and welcoming our visitors with your submission towards the discussion concerning things that things to do with PDM, that PDM is not genuine. I am a born of Bunyangabu district, but I live here in Abu Dhabi. My dear brothers and sisters on UBC Behind the Headlines, we are talking about the economy of Uganda and collecting taxes, but the government of Uganda should touch on the income that people from abroad generate towards and send to the country, and for people to construct water, buying cement, whether it is benefiting I think there is a problem here with some of the sentence construction. But he says our motherland, our mother country is not coming on board, and we are struggling to assist us, those of us who are struggling abroad. Thank you for the show. And then someone here called Jacob Okware from Chireka Kasokoso says, I am enjoying this conversation. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob. And then I think let me take now two more. Mr. Oboth. Oh, I'm not Mr. Oboth. I am Mr. I am Charles Odongso, not Oboth. I think the Makerere University lecturer should be the Minister of Finance, not Honorable Matia. I'm reading the and then he says in Luganda, Mbuswi. Honorable Matia, my friend, you introduced the term that has become popularized and people like using it. Okay, let me read this one from Amuria district. And the person is called, the viewer is called Moses Oderecha. He says, good evening and thank you for the program. I particularly want to appreciate Mr. Muhumuza's dissection of this subject. He is spot on. Guys, you guys are spot on. Additionally, government should cut the price of the size, of parliament to about 150 MPs and 18 ministers as a prudent measure to unlock money for productive expenditure. Gentlemen and ladies, I need to bring in Dr. Muhumuza.
And I clear the issue of VAT.
Yes, yes, that clarification.
Yes,
kindly help our viewer.
Last year we had to do an amendment in Parliament. Previously, if you supplied government, you know, VAT was on accrual basis. So if you supply government goods worth 100 million, then when you issue the invoice, you have to account for VAT. Meaning, even if government takes 2 years to pay you, you have the month in which you have issued the invoice, you needed to pay the tax man. And most of the people would struggle to actually borrow money to pay government taxes. We caused an amendment in Parliament to require, to allow the suppliers of government to account for VAT on cash accounting basis. That when government has paid you, that is when you account for VAT. It created some relief, because you'd find someone has supplied government, issued an invoice, you are demands. If he's unable to pay, penalty and interest. So it's created a relief, but still, we need, I think, to go beyond that. Given the delay in settling arrears, you still have businesses that have to borrow from the banks to pay the cost of implementing the projects that or the service someone supplied. So there is a little bit of relief on the VAT side, but I think now the issue is about settlement of arrears quickly for businesses.
Yeah, okay, but I just want to inform my brother here that whilst they did that, URA is still pushing that you go there every month to declare and even pay. They have not gone to what the amendment said. And I can tell you the sanctions, if you don't go on the date they want you to go there, are quite high.
Okay. That's something to make a follow-up on. Maybe
it's the implementation of the law.
Yes, implementation
and
of
enforcement
the strict enforcement of the law. Dr. Susan or Dr. Muhumuza, who wants to go first? There are a number of issues that have come up, and this issue of honesty and cutting government, the cost of running government, the cost of politics, is that something that that realistically can be done? And for me, you know, sometimes we have discussions and we are asking ourselves, do our discussions yield positive results? And some of these are the things we are talking about. It's all good to keep discussing, throwing ideas, giving advice and all that. But if it falls on deaf ears, then what?
I think it's a question of what is government? And that's a conversation we had earlier on. The cost of politics. Which politics are we talking about?
Correct.
Most people are going to think politics are these honorable members of parliament. So if you reduce them from 529, bring them down to 60 or 30, you have solved the problem.
No.
Oh, but local governments are bigger.
The local governments are out there, but even there are big mistakes that we make, which
That's
you
right.
even wonder where did they come from. Look at Lubowa, 1.4 trillion.
Yeah.
Was that the need
one project.
of the day? Did it come from parliament? They had to deal with it.
Bad investment.
You have all these
So why don't we discuss cost of government different from corruption? Because some of these things you are now beginning to mention.
No, there is the corruption, but the corruption is being created by what we think is government. But actually it may not be government. It may be somebody who has taken a certain thing in government for purposes of corruption. Now if you had an effective, efficient government structure that is able to check who brings what do I adopt, and partly you can pick that from parliament, partly, I'm saying partly, because also bear with them, there are certain things that will come through. So you have huge projects, and
Doctor,
I think that's what...
I think you better get, you know, the reason why we have this problem is the interchangeability of the word government. The one with the big G and the one with the small g.
And then governance.
And then governance. We always confuse those three
Yes.
words. The small g is the executive. The big G is the whole thing. So I wanted him to, because our people actually get confused by those three.
Yeah, and that's for me the confusion, that when people say, can't you advise government?
Yes.
They don't know when is the G and when is the other G.
That's right.
And then others say, but we are all government. No, but when small G takes a decision, don't bring me in.
Correct.
As legislature.
Who is part of the big G?
We are not.
Even me, community out there. So there are certain decisions we are carrying, and I think Honorable Kateshumba has hinted on that. And when the budget comes to you people, we want you to look through and say, what should be the priority at this point in time? You want to get this patient off the high dependency unit, back to the ward, and hopefully eventually discharge. Now, at that point, you don't begin to have a conversation of what food they should be eating.
Just a
Sometimes
small
you
one.
just put a tube, because you must give them highly digested food.
Just some information, Doctor.
Yes.
We've been faced, we are 2 years in the parliament. In the last financial year, we did exactly that for the first time.
Yes.
They brought for us a budget. There was those Luboa you're talking about. There was some at Yak. There was things that we felt could not change the lives of our people. We reallocated the budget, put it in water, which is the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Put it in education, which is the biggest issue. Put it in health. What did we see?
Small G.
The small G comes and said, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Everything that we refused
Came back.
was even already paid, just not coming back. Actually, money that we had put in health, education, and agriculture was all suppressed, removed, and taken to those things that we felt would not have the immediate effects that we would see. So that small G, thank you for bringing the issue of the big and the small.
Yes.
I think from today on we should be separating G, the big one and the small
and that's
one.
important.
So Parliament did its part. Really.
That's important for our viewers.
Yes.
Yeah.
To put that context in place to say, when we say government,
Yeah.
what do we mean? Because
Yes.
most people would attack MPs.
Yes.
Yes.
We are the punching bag.
We are the
They will
punching
attack
bag.
the MPs.
Yes.
But the MPs have not also been party to this in some cases.
That's right.
And now you cannot say the small G is all the executive.
Yeah.
Within there,
There are also other G's again.
There's another deep,
There is
what do you
a-
call it, deep state?
there are those who are part of the cartel of the G. There are those who are the G itself.
I like the word cartel.
The tail of the G, you know? So it's a very complicated situation that we find ourselves in. So even as we discuss the politics, you come back and say, which politics are we talking about?
Correct.
I've just been reading the papers from the BBC here. The current Prime Minister, Sunak,
yes,
paid over £1 million in taxes.
Wow.
He has given out his papers there.
Wow.
Go over and cross the Atlantic. How much did Trump pay? Literally nothing.
Zero.
That's why security went to his house.
And classified documents were found at his house.
Exactly.
And computers.
So that's the governance. And we are saying until we resolve these issues, we cannot get into the fixing of the budget and of the economy. Because these are affecting the economy at the end of the day. So you're coming back, you want to come back and say vehicles. He had a vehicle at URA. I wanted to ask, how far did the vehicle line go? Who else was entitled to a vehicle in URA? In government, you'll find even a very junior person has a vehicle.
And
Can't we start there and say, by the way, vehicles, either directors and above?
By the way.
And even then,
save more money.
Even then, we are going to lease them.
Yes.
Because a lease means I pay small amounts over years. But if you are going to buy a whole car at once, you need some 500 million. And then you begin to service it in a very corrupt system.
Also that, from that, I also see, you know, the discussion that we should also push for, especially MPs, and I think that these are complaints that MPs can raise. If you talk about vehicles, there are those which are by policy attached. Maybe a minister of state, and I know for a fact that a minister of state, for example, is not supposed to use a vehicle which is 4,000 cc. But all of them now
4,800.
For over 4,800, you know, and all that. And it's on the taxpayer. Then you find there are even transport officers, by nature of them being depository of the vehicles, they will use vehicles of bigger capacity than even the cabinet ministers. You understand? Now that is abuse. That is not in policy. There is the wastage which is in policy. Then there is the wastage which is just out of sheer impunity.
And that's the conversation we want when the budget comes over. Because I know some vehicles, people have told me this was a project vehicle. Now the projects have no limitations of that nature. So a project is going to buy a vehicle of 4,800 cc. Now when the project closes, the ministry owns the vehicle. It has brought itself a burden that was not for its own. Why doesn't the project end and we auction the cars rather than adopting them in the mainstream as a burden? So there are policy issues. We're talking about resuscitation of the economy, and I think they put there 200 billion SME recovery.
What is the uptake?
And only about 7 billion has been taken. Now there are policy issues here on how does economics speak to resuscitation of the economy. One, you already have 2.7 trillion in arrears. Of the same SMEs and medium other companies, you are saying they should now go to the bank. Why don't you just pay them what you owe them? Because their uptake is automatic.
You want them to pay
but then you put money in the bank.
So now you put it in the bank
to borrow.
And the bank would be keen, because remember it's putting its own, and the bank would be genuine. Because the bank is going to say, okay, what will Kateshumbwa, where will he sell the milk if he comes for a loan? So before I actually give you money for the cooler, I'm interested in knowing whether you can sell that milk.
Okay.
The banks are very clear on some of those issues. So we need to get back and say, can we take drastic policy measures? This is a structural adjustment that we're talking about. Cutting things, it's going to be rough, and it should be rough and tough, because the economy needs to be resuscitated and recovered.
Dr. Susan, is that a possibility in your estimation? Now that we know that we are dealing with a debt-ridden budget, we are dealing with issues of wastage, we are dealing with issues of corruption, mismanagement of the economy from the different perspectives. Those structural adjustments, can they be undertaken? Is it the panacea, really?
Thank you, Charles. That's a very interesting question. Everybody does something most times because of an incentive. And even politicians have incentives. And when we're teaching in our economics, we say they have their objective function. What I mean is that they have their interests. Let me bring it down.
I've learned one new word, objective function.
Yes. And normally, the politicians, their objective function is to win as many votes as possible. And so most times their actions are in line with that. That whatever they do, how they govern the country, should enable them to have a second term or whatever term. Now, economists tend to lie on the side of the technicians who also have an objective function, stabilizing the economy, recovering the economy, dealing with poverty, unemployment, etc. Now, oftentimes, these objectives are different from the politicians and the economists. But in a more democratic society, they tend to converge around the aspiring for the same objectives.
Service delivery to the
Service
people.
delivery, dealing with the unemployment, poverty, improving human capital. Until we reach that point, we may have divergent views and actions. But at this time...
Is that point reached at a certain stage of development trajectory, or it is reached based on some ideology of running the nation?
Well,
because I'm interested in finding out at what point do those, because it seems like the objective functions are so much at par, these different people.
Yeah, it depends on the level of democracy that you have in your country. It evolves with time. Sometimes it can come up as a result of just one person, a leader, benevolent leader who ushers you up into democracy, or sometimes it can be delayed, if it is not well entrenched in the society. So as a country, I think we need to aspire for that, we have democratic governance that really looks at the welfare of every Ugandan. Because when we look at our country, one of the problems that we have is the high income inequality. High income inequality. When you look at the household survey, the average income is about 300,000, but others earn like 50 times that amount. Okay? And we are complaining about aggregate demand. Each one of us, you can't have more than one plate of food, or you can't sleep on more than one bed, even if you're very rich. Now, the person who is making the beds will make fewer beds because not everybody can afford a bed. So if we want to increase aggregate demand and spur the economy, we also need to deal with that income inequality that is so entrenched in our society that, we have these wide disparities in salaries that we need to deal with so that everybody can afford a basic life, And if you make some savings with money that you can slash some salaries, that money can be put in the social sectors that Honorable Atim was talking about. Because world over, economies thrive with their human capital. Because it's the human capital that is going to come up with innovations, and it's what is going to be rewarded for their input. So you put in education, you put in health, because right now we still have challenges, inequalities, gender inequalities in education. We were able to achieve gender parity at primary level. But past primary level, we still have gender inequalities that, we have fewer women at upper levels. So we need to deal with that. When we go to health, it's another challenge because we have health centers that don't have supplies, medical supplies. And so we need to deal with those issues because you want a good human capital. We are always told when we are young, you have to have a healthy mind in a healthy body. So we cannot only look at the mind, but also have to look at the body. So we have to invest in those social sectors. And they have multiplier effects because if government invests in the social sectors, they are labor intensive. It's going to employ so many teachers. Right now we have very huge student-teacher ratios. So we need to deal with that at all levels, right from primary, secondary, even at university. That means recruiting more people. That means more people are going to earn. That means that more people are going to buy items produced by somebody in Amolata. And so if we invest, even the health sector is labor intensive. The doctor-patient ratio needs to be dealt with by recruiting more doctors. So I go back to where I ended, that now we need to think about where we are investing our resources. Where are we investing the meager resources we have? URA is not giving us as much as we want, and yet we need to, the economy needs to go on. We have this huge population. You know, we have a very high population growth rate. 1 million babies every year. Uganda gets 1 million babies every year. We have to cater for them. So we need to find ways of revamping the economy. And I said I'm glad I talked about the fiscal policy, that now the fiscal policy is moving together with the monetary policy. Fiscal policy basically means rules that govern how government collects revenue and how it spends. Okay.
And it is Ministry of Finance in charge of it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And appropriation, because as is mentioned, being representatives of the people, they can say, we think the best interest, what she's saying about the ideal, if the two are to merge, big G and small g, can we put this money here? Can we put this money here? Now, the executive in their implementation
do something.
Can actually again change that. Now, if the oversight can't oversee the executive, then you have a bigger problem, which eventually translates into that weak economy we are seeing. Not that the members of parliament can be right. Sometimes they can make a mistake.
Many times they make
but those are the things you want to have a conversation. That's why the budget goes to parliament twice. It went there, they made their comment, they gave it back to the executive. Next week, it's coming back to parliament for final discussion and appropriation. Until those spaces and minds converge. And as is mentioned, convergence should not be what do we want to see we in the executive and the legislature. What is good for those people? For
the people.
Now, I don't see that yet. Because I want a big gasoline vehicle. So I order for more vehicles at the expense of even an ambulance, by the way. And then I come to say I would buy the ambulance. But an ambulance without a nurse in the hospital, you're only shifting a position where the person is going to die from.
Let me wind up with talking about agriculture. And we all know that that's where majority of our people are. And the PDM is targeting subsistence farmers. I hope they diagnose the problem very well.
Of PDM.
Personally, I conducted a study that looked at the factors that influence commercialization of maize and cassava in Uganda. Very interesting. I came up with very interesting findings, but one of the issues that was highlighted in the study is that people are not commercializing agriculture because of low production, that is as a result of low land productivity. And when you look at low land productivity, it means that we are not engaging in the best agronomic practices. And so if we are to do any intervention, it should not be just single that, you know, you're providing water, you're providing seedlings, but it should be comprehensive that this person can increase the productivity of land. And productivity of land will depend on so many factors. That will include the issues to deal with climate change, issues to deal with pests, issues to deal with diseases. And so if we are to make interventions in agriculture, we need to look at agriculture holistically and help these farmers by putting in place support mechanisms right at the grassroots that are going to help these farmers. But beyond looking at the supply, increasing the supply, we must deal with the market. We've suffered and seen several times our farmers earning less than what they expected to earn. Because of oversupply in the market. So we need to think through and say, okay, if you're triggering an increase in maize production, who is going to buy this maize? And create a market for our agricultural produce,
Okay.
and the farmer will be better off.
We are left with, by my watch, 5 minutes to midnight, to the end of the show. I'm now going to give each of you at least 1 minute or 1.5 to give your final messages. Starting with Dr. Susan, then I will come round.
Thank you, Charles. I'm happy to be here. I've enjoyed my maiden appearance.
I've enjoyed
a very interesting discussion.
Too. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, just to our viewers, the economy is recovering. It's recovering, but slowly. So for some time, we may have to feel it in our pockets, but my appeal is to our managers of the economy to make the rightful decisions, which will enable us to fully recover from the shock that we got as a result of the different pandemics.
Thank you, Doctor. Who wants to follow? Honorable Babu or Dr. Katesh? I'm sorry, Honorable Katesh. Not yet doctor, but that's a good thing to think about.
Well, for me, I think the issue is that we have reached a point where finally, I think we have to face it square. Because you see, the moment you reach 50% debt to GDP, and you even a struggle to mobilize the debt, and the revenue is not increasing, but you continue spending as if it's business as usual. I think you reach a point where it becomes clear to you that things have to change. The programs are clearly stated out. NDP3, a very wonderful document. And for me, if we connected the dots in that strategy, put KPIs that would measure performance, I think things would be different. And I think even with little money we can do something.
I think so.
Everything is connected. She talked about agriculture. Parliament appropriated money last year for road equipment for districts, new districts, and new municipalities, and increased funding to road fund. Why? Because we knew the road infrastructure would enable a farmer to take the produce from a farm to the market. It would enable a tourist to move from Kisoro to Windy in 30 minutes. But that appropriation fell flat.
Was not released.
And you know, in my district, we have a road which has been on plan for the last, 30 years, that connects with Wera to Kawohe. From December, all the access roads to that, to the areas of Mashiruka, which is our biggest banana, producing area, were completely, destroyed. So the farmer would say, I cannot take, there is no vehicle which would actually want to go to ferry the matoke out of the village. Simply because the road network is not functioning. UNRWA does not have money to do the road. And so what we are saying is, I think government, we need to go back to the NDP3 to say, okay, the enablers must be dealt with. It's not enough for you to say money in PDM, but then the produce cannot be evacuated to the market. It's not enough for you to have produce in different areas, but there is no consolidation center to aggregate production, add value, have proper storage, and then evacuate it to the market. So all these things need rethinking in planning. They need people to be very honest. Unfortunately, and I have said it again before, that some actors in government, some of the technical people, are very arrogant. They sit in Kampala. They have not visited the ground. They issue papers, read out statements. Things are good, but on the ground, things are different. So it's high time for people to get into the field. Go down in Amarota, if you are talking about economics, and see what is happening.
Let them also go to West Nile and see the kind of roads.
Because you find
the kind of road that is serving that entire stretch, and it is a big road that goes to Congo. Because it is a huge market.
You find that MPs have become punching bags. Every small issue about expenditure, the excuse is reduce parliament. Even if you reduce parliament to 20 people, you are not going to solve the problem.
Or you remove it.
It is high time people stopped blaming parliament. Parliament is not the biggest cost driver or the biggest cause of inefficiency.
Why don't you as MPs help me? I want to challenge you.
Yes.
Get me the, what do they call it? Comparative analysis.
Yes.
Of if we reduced parliament, we would save this.
Go to the Minister of Finance.
Then, no, first get from you, from parliament. And then what if we reduce the cabinet? What if we cut, what if we reduce, you know, the local government?
I've given you
local governments are huge.
I've given you an example of vehicles. An MP who is given 200 million for 5 years to buy a vehicle, go to government, assistant commissioner with a vehicle. In 5 years, government will have spent 1.5 billion. You can go and prove the costs. And you multiply by the number of vehicles. Then you should...
Oh, we multiply by the number of the commissioners and assistant.
They are more than the MPs. So there should, this complaint about parliament, it takes away the real issues that we should be tackling and reduces the discussion to members of parliament. It is high time the public, they should give us a break. We are doing our best to actually do appropriation. The pressures on the members of parliament because of inefficiency in service delivery are unimaginable. And I think because I was telling someone yesterday in Shema that I wish I can lend you this seat for about a month. The gentleman told me that I would fly back to Canada.
I would be interested in that analysis and that study if you people agree we do it together, but not to absolve MPs. Not to absolve parliament, but to get a better solution proposal. But Honorable Babu,
Yeah, I think our problem is not to pick up small things, because this, to me, that is diverting us.
Yes.
We are talking about an economy where we, by the way, a lot of policies which have been put out are extremely good. Unfortunately, we have failed to implement them. Now, and at the same time, the pocket is shrinking. And we are trying to say, how do we save to be able to implement? One of the things we found out is the cost of administration. We are not talking about parliament only.
No.
We're talking about generally the whole administration. How do we reduce the cost of administration? And we start, actually, let's not start with parliament. Let's start with the small g.
Cabinet.
That's cabinet. Let's start with the cabinet and come down. And look, you're talking about vehicles a few minutes ago. You're talking about the civil service itself. And you're now talking about, my worry, we are not implementing what we have decided. Now that implementation demands certain things. One of the things we have not talked about today, which is the worst thing we're having, is corruption. Corruption, according to Transparency International, is 26. The worst case scenario is 0. The best scenario is 100%. So if we are at 26, we're not very far from 0, which means there's a little perception about corruption in this country. The question, does corruption have a problem with our implementation? You know, those are things that we've got to look at. At the same time, we've got to be sincere. Can we afford to have certain models of government in this country depending on our economy? We're talking about a model including decentralization. This is decentralization, increasing districts every day. Can we afford it? If we can afford it, fine. We can even have a parliament of 1 million if we need so. What I'm trying to say is, can we afford it? We are not against members of parliament. Please, let's get this point correct. We're talking about administrative costs in this country. And by the way, if we could afford it, why not 500? Why not 600? Yeah? So this is an area we must think about. These councils, these districts, And somebody who was suggesting a few minutes about region, when we got independence, we had 15 districts. From there, we have now come all the way 120.
146.
146. The question is, what happened to the 15 we started with? Will those be regions? Because those ones used to work. Now, the population has increased. Obviously, we might need a better management than that. The question is, how fast can we go from where we are, depending on our budget? Lastly, I want to say this. Don't blame individuals. The Minister of Finance works with a team, and a team of experts. We have the Bank of Uganda, we have the Ministry of Finance, we have a planning section. These people work together. They have got fantastic papers they have written about how to improve our economy. And in some cases, by the way, you gave them kudos a few minutes ago that they have managed to maintain the policy, the economy in this worst case scenario. Now, I don't think we should blame anybody. We have a problem, we must find a solution to it. And His Excellency the President, the other day, when he was talking, a lot of people said, but why is he talking about PDM? He should talk about corruption. He should tell us about the Babatis. No, this is the perception of the average person. So corruption, we need a conversation on corruption very seriously. Is corruption one of the biggest problems? We are just glossing over it. But is it one part of our problems? The other problem we have is the international relationship we have with people. There are people who are telling us, if you don't want this policy, we will not do this with you. We are spending money being in Congo. That's an expenditure. We are having something in Somalia. We are talking about vehicles. These vehicles we've been talking about them for years. We are not against anybody having a vehicle. The question is, can our economy afford it? Well, I don't mind you having a Rolls Royce, but can we afford a Rolls Royce? These are questions that you should ask yourself. That's where the word honesty comes in. Can we afford? I'm saying, yes, I would like to have all those good things, but for goodness sake, let's look at our pocket and see if we can help out. Our balance of our reserve right now is $136 billion, which will last only 3.5 months, another 4 months, if we are doing it. One of the countries in East Africa doesn't have a reserve. They're having a very, very big problem. You're talking about a debt ratio. One of the countries in East Africa has got 70% debt ratio. Ours is about, you're talking about, we're not even 50 yet. So at the end of the day, do I take a risk and let my debt ratio go up so I can do certain things? Those are questions we've got to answer ourselves. But what I'm trying to say, and I'm saying this, for goodness sake, let's live out of our pocket. Let us not live outside our pocket because we can't afford it. And the people who are giving us money, the European Union says they won't give us money. The American says we won't give you money if you sign that bill you passed the other day. We will not give you money. In other words, we should not live with those people threatening us. We should live within our means.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And if we cut corruption, I'm sure that we would do better.
Thank you.
Honorable Apea, your last word.
Thank you very much. My last word.
But I pray that your last word as an MP includes the challenge of supplementaries, especially this issue of
3%.
This issue of not prioritizing the priorities and then bringing the priorities as request for supplementaries. It really can really stress.
Thank you very much. I may not say it in your supplementary word. I will say it in the language that my people will understand. Now, two things. One is that as a country, we are a blessed country. The money, the little money that we have would do for us what we need if we only prioritize on the right things and put that little money in the right things, in the right priority of our country. And secondly, what we need as a country, and our honorable has talked about it, corruption for me, again, is also a symptom. It's not really an issue. The issue is efficiency and effectiveness of managing our resources. And I think the pragmatism he was talking about. If only we would really align ourselves to the system that we put ourselves. If Mabati is meant for Karamoja, why would you take it to another place? Because it's a policy. It is written there that take it to Karamoja.
No, those Mabatis walk to people.
So for me now, the walking is the corruption. But the system is in place. So effective and efficient management of our resources would solve this. And finally, let's invest in our people.
Yes.
The biggest resource we have as a country is our people.
Human capital.
It is a human capital. Invest in their health. Invest in their education. Invest in what they are doing, and that is agriculture. And in that way, you are investing in the vicious cycle of the economy, which involves productivity. When they are productive, they will earn money. When they earn money, they are going to spend. And when they spend, you generate the revenue. And when you get the revenue, you go and invest in whatever you want to invest in as a country. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Finally, Dr. Muhumuza.
Well, I will take less time because this conversation is going to continue tomorrow. The MOBS Economic Forum, jointly with the Ministry of Finance,
yes,
we have organized a discussion in the neighborhood here in Serena on these issues, debt and development.
Yes.
Is our debt sustainable? What do we need to be doing? So for viewers out there who are still awake and those who have slept, please, when they wake up, tell them to tune in on their TVs. We've made sure it's a public debate. But not everybody could come to Serena. So we have made sure it's going to be televised. And we are following logic, just like Agnes Appiah has ended. Logic is everything. And one of the things I like watching and learn a lot from is air crash investigation. What happened?
Air crash investigation.
What happened? And they follow that logic.
Yes.
It was here, and I like the way they draw the lessons. They are like doctors with postmortem.
Yes.
Every death should save the future.
Correct.
So they have remodified airplanes. You saw Max, this is Boeing Max whatever.
Yes.
With the drone.
737
exactly.
Max.
What happened? Now, until Uganda gets to that level of what happened.
The one of Ethiopia and Indonesia.
What happened? And the Auditor General has been very precise on a number of things. These reports, whenever they come to Parliament, quite often will pick a few institutions and individuals to grill. And we miss the real detail of how did the cost of a road escalate? How was the road adopted? Now the Mabati may follow individuals. As she has said, what exactly happened? I am not seeing technical people in this whole thing.
Oh, they have now named them.
They must have been there.
The people who gave the contracts to buy those Mabatis and the goats, they have now brought them up.
Why didn't we deliver the Mabati directly where the districts are? From the supplier, why do you bring them to a store? You just tell customers, if you're the one bringing Mabati, deliver 29 to Kabong, 29 to Amara, you know, do that. So these are the issues to say what happened, and we really want to learn from this tomorrow. We want to say some of the policies are wrong. I don't believe every parish should have a primary school. It should be guided by the population.
Correct.
I don't believe every district should have a hospital. Some districts are really small, others are big. Not every district should have a road construction equipment.
Yes.
Some districts are really tiny. So you end spending up $1 billion to buy the equipment and you have no fuel.
Yes, and they're packed.
And the driver.
And the driver. So that's the logic. That if I do this, I get this. If I do this, I get this. And if I don't get the other one, you come back to say, where was the problem? So for me, the conversation will continue tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's go and sleep.
One of your viewers,
Let's go and sleep.
One of your viewers from Kamuli says, Honorable Kateshumbwa, Kateshumbwa needs another term in office. That he actually needs to make a date with those panelists again. Don't miss Dr. Muhumuza and Captain Babu on that panel. This is someone called Zakaria from Kamuli. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I have several messages, but unfortunately we cannot read all of them. But I really appreciate all of you for being part of this show and participating virtually watching and ensuring that you share with us your thoughts, your messages, and your questions. We value them so much here. I want to thank so much Honorable Francis Babu. Always a pleasure to have you and to get your very able thoughts to share with us. I want to thank you very much, the MPs, Honorable Kateshumba and Honorable Apea, for finding time to come and share with us your thoughts. You're very busy people. We thank you for yesterday's struggle. You know, they would say what? In how a very battle-hardened, how would you describe it in Luganda? If you know these people are really now battling and biting. How would you say it, Honorable Babu?
Which one is
in Luganda?
In Luganda.
There is a word that would describe...
Insitano. Insitano? Or...
Something like that.
Agambia?
Insitano, something like that.
Insitano. Insitano
big
is
fight.
much more of a
big fight.
Yeah, yeah.
And that you come out, you know, battle-hardened and successful. Yes. So that's what someone was saying they were involved in yesterday. So thank you very much, and thanks a lot to the economic teachers, Dr. Susan and Dr. Muhumuza. We really appreciate you. And from the entire team here, the technical team, the producer, Thomas Etiang, and the rest of the team, we thank you very much. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're descending into Entebbe Airport. For those proceeding to Kampala City, the biggest event in East Africa is in town.
That's right. The East African Business Expo 2023 is happening from the 23rd to the 26th of March at Kololo Grounds. Join us to network, connect, and grow. Contact us for exhibition or sponsorship opportunities. The 14th East African Procurement Forum and Business Expo 2023 is hosted by PPBA.
Now sit back and relax. It's time to explore great business opportunities.
Do you know your architect? Is your architect registered? An architect in Uganda is one registered with the Architects Registration Board, ARB. ARB is a statutory body mandated to regulate and maintain standards and practice of architecture in Uganda. Save money and life that is often lost in collapsing buildings as a result of employing quacks to supervise your construction sites. Remember, only registered architects have professional indemnity in the event of loss of your property. To learn more about the benefits of using a registered architect, visit www.arbuganda.go.ug now. Or call us on 0781 498 823 or find us at PKF Building, Kira Road, Kampala.